The ASX comes close to a 2-year low and the Aussie dollar tumbles with fear gripping financial markets. The federal government provides some detail on the proposed national anti-corruption watchdog, and Qantas might be a little on the nose at home, but it's just been ranked the 5th best airline in the world. It's Tuesday, the 27th of September, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. Now, I don't want to be too excited about what's going on in financial markets at the moment, but when you have a podcast called Fear and Greed,
it is a podcast that's built for these times, really, isn't it?
Totally, because markets are driven by fear and greed, which of course is why we named our podcast Fear and Greed. The other reason was that when we all worked in journalism, we all realised that, front page, what do you want on the front page? Fear or greed? Therefore, fear and greed. But right now, markets are just being driven by fear. It's quite incredible.
It is an extraordinary time, isn't it? And just watching it, you just kind of think, okay, this is just going to be a one day or a couple of day thing, but it just keeps going.
Yeah, it's really gone on. I mean, these last falls over the last week or so have been quite tremendous. And it's incredible to watch the psychology of the market, and it needs something to stop these falls, but I'm not sure what's going to do it.
Well, we'll be chatting a bit more about this in a moment. Just a quick mention of our interview today, something a little bit different today. This isn't you conducting the interview. This was me. I had a chat with Chelsea Pottinger, who is the founder of EQ Minds. It's basically all about the fact that businesses are now kind of prioritizing mental health a lot more. And Chelsea has worked with kind of brands like Google and Uber and eBay, kind of global giants, really on what they need to be doing to make the workplace a safer place for staff. And look, I thought it was a really interesting chat, but that's coming up a little bit later on.
Michael, I'm looking forward to hearing it. I haven't heard it, so straight after the show, I'm going to listen.
It feels a little immodest to say it's a really interesting chat.
Oh, I do that all the time. Every day I say that. Oh,
I know you do. I feel a little bit like you right now, just talking myself up.
There you go.
Anyway, sorry about that. The main story this morning, Sean, as we mentioned, the local share market came close to hitting a 2-year low yesterday as the sell-off in equities accelerated, really on growing fears of a recession here in Australia.
The S&P ASX 200 hit a 3-month low yesterday, falling to 6,436 points in morning trading. That was less than 0.5% of its November 2020 low. By the end of trading yesterday, it had closed down 1.6% to 6,469 points. It's now about 15% lower than where it peaked in April. It was a really wild ride, with companies considered susceptible to a global recession being sold off and those considered safe in tough times actually doing pretty well. Most market watchers now expect Europe to go into recession as interest rates rise to head off inflation. An increasing number think the same will happen in the US, while the Chinese economy will grow by around 3% this year, which is very low by that country's standards. There were some really big moves on the market yesterday. Remember last week, we were in awe of the share price performances of New Hope and Whitehaven Coal? Well, yesterday they both fell around 15%. Incredible. Another coal digger, Coronado Global, fell 13%. It wasn't because the price of coal tumbled, but because investors decided future demand for coal would tumble if the major economies went into recession. Now, the big miners also did really poorly. BHP and Rio Tinto were both down nearly 5%. Energy group Santos fell nearly 7%, while Woodside Energy was off 4.8%. But on the other side, healthcare stocks surged, as did consumer staples and technology companies. These are the companies that have less cyclicality in earnings. Blood Plasma Group CSL and Woolworths both rose 2.7%. Wesfarmers and Coles were up 2%. Tech leader REA jumped 4%. Really was a remarkable day with a diversity across the board, depending on how linked a company is to the global economy.
Sean, that what you just said about the coal companies kind of just stuck with me then, because it shows kind of how far people are looking ahead into the future and then how sentiment can drive that, because they're looking at if the major economies go into recession, then the demand for coal will be reduced. Therefore, this is hitting coal companies today.
Yes, shares are priced on future earnings, not current earnings, and we tend to forget that a bit. And what we've seen with the coal companies, people expecting coal prices to keep rising, hence the coal share prices have been rising. But as you just put it then, suddenly we have a recession, people don't want coal as much, share prices fall.
So is the local economy likely to go into recession? And I mean, Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers was warning yesterday that the global economy is deteriorating and that Australia won't be immune to that.
Yes, he was, but the Treasurer does expect the economy to keep growing, thereby avoiding recession, though challenges managing the economy will grow. He said addressing problems with skills shortages, supply chains, inflation and wage growth will be key to building economic resilience. One of the big challenges will be paying the interest bill of the $1 trillion national debt. As interest rates rise, so too does the cost to the government of servicing that debt. Now, the federal government estimates that rising interest rates will push up the servicing cost by about $125 billion over the next decade.
Wow. Now, over the weekend, Sean, we saw all of this volatility hitting the Australian dollar. How has it performed?
Well, not as bad as it appears at first glance. Now, stay with me, Michael. We're going to have a little discussion about exchange rates here.
All right, this sounds like a lesson. Go ahead.
In currency markets, investors just want to buy the US dollar, which is considered a safe haven in times of trouble. Now, the pound sterling, for example, fell to its lowest level ever against the greenback yesterday. It's down about 20% this year. The Japanese yen is under pressure, having dropped 25% against the US dollar. The euro is off about 15% in 2022. The Aussie dollar yesterday fell below 65 US cents for the first time since early 2020. It might sound bad, but the Aussie has actually outperformed many other currencies. It's down only about 10% against the greenback this year, and outside the US dollar, hasn't really depreciated against most other currencies. So the Aussie is actually an outperformer if you can ignore the US dollar.
I followed every single word of that.
Whoa.
I think we're both surprised here, aren't we? Sean, what about commodity prices?
Well, the price of oil has stabilised somewhat after losing 7% last week. Brent crude is fetching around $86 a barrel. Iron ore prices have come off and gold's slide continues. Now, copper is considered a bellwether among commodities. Really worth having a look at the copper price. It tends to do well when economies are doing well. But the price of copper is now more than 30% below its peak of March this year. Though, Michael, just out of interest, one commodity that hasn't come off is lithium. It just shows that the mega trend of electrification is more powerful than the cyclical factors at work in the global economy.
All right, there is a lot happening. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, this is an interesting one. Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers wants to change franking credit laws.
Yes, remember the election before last when Labor went to the people with plans to change franking credit laws? Didn't end well. I don't think Bill Shorten has gotten over it yet. This is much different, or as Dr. Chalmers says, it's a very minor alteration. Maybe. The legislation would prevent companies who raise capital from using that money to pay fully franked dividends. The government wants to stop companies raising capital, and then when they realise they don't actually need it, paying back fully franked, which means the tax has been paid, to shareholders. Instead, dividends must come out of realised profits. This was actually a Morrison government plan in 2016. The new government has picked it up and run with it, but I think we're going to hear a lot about it.
I suspect you might be right there. There is actually plenty going on in Canberra this week with Parliament back. However, the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, isn't going to be there for the next couple of days. He's flying to Japan for the funeral of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
That's right. But before he went, he had a bit to say on the Optus cyber attack, which affected 9.8 million Australians. He called it a huge wake-up call for the corporate sector in terms of protecting data. He made the comments as part of the government's push to change privacy laws that currently prevent banks being told when customer information has been stolen from other organisations. As you mentioned, plenty going on. Attorney General Mark Dreyfus outlined some details about the proposed Federal Anti-Corruption Commission. He said it will be able to investigate serious or systemic misconduct by any person, that any person is critical, that could adversely affect honesty or impartiality. Some of the crossbenchers have called for a wide-ranging anti-corruption commission with the power to investigate both politicians and third parties, and it seems that's exactly what it will be able to do. In fact, Jackie Lambie yesterday said she wanted a thing with a set of chops on it bigger than Jaws. Opposition leader Peter Dutton said his team could support the commission subject to key conditions. Also yesterday, Health Minister Mark Butler re-announced that more than 2,000 brands of medicines on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme will have their prices cut, saving consumers about $130 million. He added that monkeypox cases in Australia had stabilised. That's good news. And finally, Nationals leader David Littleproud criticised Jim Chalmers' decision not to provide a large amount of cost of living support in next month's federal budget. saying the Treasurer is out of touch with Australian families.
And Sean, you mentioned Optus before. Did you see that for customers that have been affected by the big hacking incident of last week, that they're being offered a 12-month subscription to a credit monitoring and identity theft protection service? So a little bit of a follow-up to that one.
Yeah, about 3 million or almost 3 million customers will be able to avail themselves of that service. There's also talk about a class action already against Optus. Clearly plenty to play out on that one.
Yeah, certainly is. Sean, the Star Entertainment acting CEO Jeff Hogg has quit following an inquiry that found the company was unfit to hold a casino licence in New South Wales.
Yes, Chair Ben Heap will step in as executive chairman until a newly appointed CEO, Robbie Cook from Tyro Payments, joins the gaming group. Now, the Star is expected to today respond to a show cause notice from the New South Wales regulator to show why it shouldn't lose its licence in the state or face a series of up to $100 million fines. It'll be very interesting what its argument is.
Now, we mentioned this one at the top of the show, Sean, and I love talking about airlines, so I'm looking forward to this. Qantas might be losing a few friends here at home, but it has been ranked the 5th best airline in the world and the region's top carrier in the annual Skytrax Award.
Yes, now, these awards have been described as the Oscars of the aviation industry.
I love that saying.
Yeah.
It's for any kind of industry awards, that's the easiest descriptor is to say it's the Oscars.
It's the Oscars. That's exactly right. And they were presented over the weekend, but they're based on 13 million returned customer surveys around the world undertaken between September 2021 and August this year. Pretty amazing, really. Qantas moved from 8 last year to 5th behind Qatar Airways, which once again won the Oscar, shall we say. It was number 1, Singapore Airlines number 2, then Emirates and All Nippon Airways, and then Qantas. Now, Qantas came in 3rd in the premium economy category and 6th in both business class and economy. On a regional basis, Qantas was number 1, followed by Air New Zealand, Fiji Airways, Virgin Australia, and then Jetstar. Don't feel too sorry for Jetstar. It was ranked the world's 2nd best low-cost carrier.
All right, this is going to put you on the spot. What won the best low-cost carrier?
Scoot.
Did it?
It did. It did.
Oh, there you go. I really thought I was going to catch you out then. I thought, I've got him. I have got him here. Oh.
You've got to realise that when I say those things, I actually do, I check it out before because I know that you will try and say something like that.
It's a very healthy relationship we have here, isn't it, Sean?
A very healthy relationship. We're not competitive.
No, not at all. Now, Rio Tinto has sacked a man who allegedly assaulted a woman and threatened her with a makeshift weapon at one of the miners' accommodation villages. This is pretty disturbing.
Sure is. It comes just months after Rio released a damning review of its workplace culture and after a Western Australia parliamentary inquiry into sexual assaults and harassment in the mining industry. Rio has spent $200 million on security and safety upgrades this year in response to the inquiries, according to the Financial Review. It's also installed 16,000 new locks on rooms across 24 villages in the Pilbara and much greater CCTV and security guard coverage. Rio said it was distressed and saddened by this latest allegation. The man involved now faces criminal charges.
Sean, what was to be the biggest takeover of the year is now officially over, with talks between private hospital group Ramsay Health Care and private equity company KKR over.
The $30 billion deal fell over 2 weeks ago when KKR pulled out. There was hope of salvaging an agreement, but discussions have ended. Ramsay said it is still open to a new buyout proposal, but only if it adds value to shareholders, of course. The offer was $88 a share. Now, Ramsay's share price fell 2.5% yesterday. It's trading at just over $59 a share. That's a long way below $88 a share. There's been a bunch of M&A deals that haven't quite made it this year. Ramsay is the biggest. Dye & Durham's bid for Link Group is the most prolonged. That one suffered another body blow yesterday when a court ruled out the proposed acquisition by a scheme of arrangement. That sent Link's share price down 8%.
Sean, the share price of agribusiness Costa Group tumbled 14% yesterday after a CEO quit.
Yes, and Sean Hallahan had only been in the job for 18 months. Now, it's just never a good look when a CEO goes after such a short period of time, even amid COVID and weather disruptions. Costa is Australia's biggest fruit and vegetable wholesaler, but it has struggled this year due to crop damage from hail mostly and a shortage of fruit and veggie pickers. Chair of the group, Neil Chatfield, said the challenges of the past 2 years played a role in Mr. Hallahan's decision to step down as CEO.
There was a fair bit going on yesterday in state politics, Sean, highlighted by the Queensland government announcement that it's going to build Australia's largest state-owned wind farm.
That's right. The Palaszczuk government will spend $780 million on the farm in southeast Queensland. State-owned Stanwell will build the 500-megawatt farm. It will have 150 turbines and generate enough clean energy to power as many as 230,000 homes. Across the border in New South Wales, Premier Dominic Perrottet announced a new Chief Behaviour Advisor who will work across the state, independent and Catholic schools in an effort to improve children's behaviour. I just thought one pundit yesterday made a very good point. They said they're not sure that children's behaviour is better or worse than it used to be, but due to technology and social media, we certainly know more about it.
Yeah, we sure do. Right, moving on to overseas news, and almost 2,300 top Communist Party delegates have been given the task of appointing the next president. And they're all, quote, highly qualified ideologically and politically, according to Beijing.
That's right. That means I wouldn't bet against Xi Jinping being appointed for a third term. He's pretty much assured of the role after changing the rules to allow a president to go for more than 2 terms. The 2,296 delegates were chosen from 96 million Communist Party members to attend the 20th Congress next month. They'll also appoint the 200 members of the Central Committee and the 25 members of the Politburo, which is pretty much the cabinet. The appointments last for 5 years.
And Italy's general election was held over the weekend, and voters elected their first female prime minister, a right-wing candidate.
Yes, in fact, political pundits say Italy will have its most right-wing government since World War II. Giorgia Meloni's alliance claimed about 43% of the vote, which is enough to put her in power. The 45-year-old has little experience in government, but faces rising energy costs and inflation, higher interest rates, and a downturn in the Italian economy. She will have her work cut out for her. Good luck to her.
All right, now up next is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview, and today we are speaking with Chelsea Pottinger from EQ Minds.
Tell me about it, Michael.
Well, it's basically a company that works with some of the biggest groups in the world, like Google and Uber and eBay. I mentioned those ones at the top of the show. But Chelsea has a fascinating story to tell, and it comes from her experience with postnatal depression and how she has then taken that and used it to train companies in how to recognize when their staff aren't well and how to support them. It's a really, really interesting story.
I look forward to listening to it.
It comes up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 27th of September, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And why not have a go at listening to us through your smart speaker? All you have to do is say, play the Fear and Greed podcast, and it should just start playing. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.